I didn't really know what to expect, and of course it's beyond expectations. When one talks about, moral this, ethical that, it's very important. There's also a danger of moralism. And what I think is most important in education in Ukraine and actually anywhere is an integral education that really sees the full human being. For various reasons, there's many things we find it difficult to talk about. For example, I hope the Ukrainian Catholic University will help our students be good husbands and wives, parents, citizens, not only good historians or good computer programmers. And ultimately, it is, I think, God's will that we live in peace and joy, and fulfillment, that we can raise our heads and look each other in the eye and speak heart to heart. And that is really what UKU tries to do. I have not lived there. I don't know if everybody knows, kind of the background. This was a school that was dreamed of in 1905 when Ukrainians couldn't get into the local universities in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It didn't happen then. It didn't happen in interwar Poland. Only the theology faculty was created in 1928. Then in 1939, the Soviets came. They closed it. In 1945, they arrested the head of the church, who was the leader of this institution. He spent 18 years in the Gulag, and he was freed by a fluke. The Cuban Missile Crisis occurred. The Pope intervened, John the 23rd. And Khrushchev, the leader of the Soviet Union, wanted to thank the Pope. And the Pope said, well, why don't you release that guy? And Khrushchev said, he's alive. I put him in prison. He was the head of the Communist Party in Ukraine. And so they brought Joseph Sleepy out of Siberia after 18 years of devastating, experiences. It took him months to recuperate, and they thought he would kind of live out his life quietly in a monastery. He was released in February. In November, he declared the creation of the Ukrainian Catholic University in Rome. There were 300 Ukrainians in Italy. And people said, the poor man, he's been traumatized by that experience. This is it's a fantasy. But there were a few of us that went to live there with him and study. When I went, there were 11 of us. And he said, persevere, evil won't last forever. And I say we were, kind of too young not to believe. And so when the Soviet Union fell, I was still on that track. His successor asked us to work on creating a university, first by reviving the theology faculty, but then eventually to develop other faculties. That was in 1992. And we took 2 years to think carefully, looking at different models in 10 different countries, trying to answer what kind of a university is needed in a democratic, multi-confessional, poly-ethnic, postmodern, and post-communist Ukraine. Post-communist means post-genocidal, post-traumatic. And one way one decision we did at the very beginning, I told a couple people who asked about it, the biggest challenge, anthropological challenge, for 2 billion people between Estonia, if you can imagine, on the Baltic Sea, Albania, and China and Vietnam, 2 billion people that lived under totalitarianism or still do, is that the level of trust is diminished because the system kills systematically. You don't trust the other. because the other is dangerous. So you have a mask, a facade, a wall, and your family relations, professional life, business, social interaction, politics, is all a little bit thwarted by that lack of trust. It's tough as it is, huh? I never was married, but you know, I think that's a big achievement, big challenge. But when you don't trust, you can't really do things. So what did we do to address that? Something that no university ever did. And this was a kind of an example of our hubris. We said that Made in Ukraine should be something that sets standard, that adds something that Harvard hasn't done, the Sorbonne hasn't done, you know. And right now there's 200 universities in Ukraine. And that no other university is doing. Because there's no point in just, the country built the biggest airplane in the world. It had the biggest ballistic missile factory. It was not the third world. It had a lot of scientists. Right now, those who do business with Ukraine know that, you know, there's a lot of computer programming. So what do we do? How do we address it? And addressing this anthropological need, which is general, not only for Ukraine, was kind of at the center. And so we invited people with mental disabilities to be at the center of the university, not as like a project for a social handout, but as our tutors of human relations. Because if you've ever interacted with people with mental disabilities, they don't care how much money you have or what title you have or how much power you have. They just want to know, can you love me? And that's the most important pedagogical question. And we wanted to put that question at the heart of what one might call a moral education. And it does wonders. And, you know, I invite all of you to come to visit the university to see what it's like when you have this yeast, this salt, because Jesus says, you know, be the yeast and salt. And so in this institution, which now has the highest incoming SAT scores in the country, it's the most difficult institution to get into, because why? What does high SAT scores mean? Most talented kids want to be there. They make their choice. In this intellectually ambitious institution, at the heart are our friends with mental disabilities. And it then changes a lot. It develops the trust. You kind of can deal, you know, with kids today. Kids have to test into kindergarten. I mean, it's ridiculous. In some of the Asian countries, you know, the amount of time children spend studying, it's all competition. And I have to do better than you, and I do better than you when you do worse than me. It's a zero-sum thing. So, with all of its limitations and weaknesses, this is what the university tries to do when it sees a problem. Problem of trust, of post-Soviet trauma, moral issues, corruption. Okay, let's just put it on the table, dissect the university, and see if we can put the pieces together in a way that will create something that is, you know, made in Ukraine, but speaks to global issues.
That's thank you. Very, very interesting. Very, you know, a lot to absorb there and a lot to think about. And just for our friends here, I'm probably going to throw one or two questions at His Grace, but please, if somebody has questions, Sashko, we have another microphone and we can please open it up. But Hannah and I and a few of us in the room were privileged, and thanks to people like Paul Marushka and other sponsors and the Uku Foundation for a discussion that we heard on Thursday at the University Club with Lumen Christi. And Your Grace, I was talking to a few people, changed in my mind, you know, what I thought was a paradigm how the world's getting worse and why are things just getting ugly all around us, and you change the paradigm to let us know that we're just beginning. Like this is just the beginning, and we have a long way to go. I was hoping you might be able to kind of frame that pretty quickly, and again, maybe tie that back to some of the very pragmatic work that the university, and it's not just the university itself as a school, as an institution, but its community is doing during what is a horrible time in history right now.
Yeah, well, that train of thought was sparked kind of by a certain anxiety, what's happening with the church and Christianity, and everything's going downhill, and kind of the church is medieval or something. And some of you can correct me, because I can't remember whether it's 14 or 40 billion years is what astronomers think we have since the Big Bang. Do you know? Is it 14 or 40? It's a lot of years. A lot of years, And recorded history is just a few thousand years. Christian history, AD is 2,000 years. And just speaking about the Christian part, I was saying, listen, I'm not going to see it. Maybe the Lord will open the perspectives. I hope from above, it's not from below, for me, what it might be like in the year 20,000 AD. And my hope, I told you we had a lot of hubris. My hope is that, and I've been saying this for 20 years, in 2022 it sounds different now. My hope was that the historian will, be writing the book on the first 20,000 years of Christian history and say, at the end of primitive Christianity, that kind of early part, around the year 2000, after a century when there was a totalitarian attempt to wipe it out in a country where this experiment was particularly vicious, where 15 million people were killed by different totalitarians, Christians, Jews, others. There were those who resisted and who said, we're going to witness to the truth. We're not going to just do the bottom line game, win or lose. No, we're going to witness to the truth no matter what the price. And that's what happened. I don't know if everybody realizes that every time there's a Russian occupation in Ukraine, the Catholic Church is strangled. And just about everybody else suffers. 18th century, 19th century, 20th century, and now it's happening in the 21st. In the Donbass, occupied Donbass, there's not a single Catholic priest functioning. I don't know if there's a rabbi, and I doubt that there's an imam. So the story is, 18,000 years hence, after that attempt in this little border country on the fault lines of, the clash of civilizations, something happened and people witnessed. They stood up to Stalinist and other communist totalitarianism, to Hitlerism. And they began witnessing the truth in a new way. And the life of the church began taking off, finally. G.K. Chesterton, 100 years ago, an English writer, said the problem with Christianity is not that it has failed, it just hasn't been fully ever tried. And what we have right now, and people get pulled into it, maybe not even fully consciously, including the president of Ukraine, is we have something that is bringing the world, elites on different continents, to reintroduce a discourse of values and principles in politics. I mean, the German miracle of the last generations started with Germany getting on its knees and repenting for Nazism. Whether everybody did it sincerely, it was quite an amazing thing. But then, when things started to develop, the Germans saw we can have cheap fuel from the Russians, cheap labor from the Chinese, and with one and the other, we're not going to worry about principles. And we're going to build a pipeline, and many of them. And I don't know if you know that Ronald Reagan was adamantly against these pipelines. He said, you're going to become energy dependent. It's the cash. I was talking with Michael Polsky, I don't know where you are, Michael. We were just saying that the problem is that everything's transactional. You don't sell yourself unless you really need to or want to. Then you can sell yourself. Just, you got to raise the price. And what is happening in Ukraine is that people are saying, no, it's not all transactional. It's not all deconstructed. It's not all relative. It's not just that there's a million of different perspectives and opinions. There is something that is true and something that is false. There's the good and there's absolute evil. And hundreds of thousands are saying, I'm willing to risk my life for it. And I think this is mesmerizing people of goodwill. Because it's tough to do that, to risk your life. I forgot the question.
It's okay. And the question was some of the pragmatic help, the pragmatic role that the UKU and the UKU Spinot or society has been playing. But I'm going to maybe add to that a little bit, because I think somebody that everybody can relate to a certain degree here in the room is President Zelensky. And he visited the university earlier this year. And so in addition to the question about the pragmatic help from the UKU, would you maybe share the president's perspective?
So maybe you remember, he visited some who were following closely. He visited the university because the university has new buildings that have very good internet and have premises underground that are good bomb shelters. They weren't built as bomb shelters, but they have auditoriums. And so he had a security conference with security leaders of the Western Ukrainian regions, governors, and, people from, I guess, the army or whatever. But he drove through the night from Kyiv, and they made good time. He arrived an hour early, and this wasn't planned. The rector of the university, Father Bodan, he's my age. He's a church historian as I am, and he's a priest. Was there, and so they had a 52-minute conversation, and Zelensky was looking around at the university, at the buildings. He's heard about it. And he said, why is this place different? Why is it different? It is different. You come in and people are smiling and they're happy, and the architecture is almost like this house. And there's art in different places, and you got, handicapped people there. And so they conversed. A week later, Zelensky calls Father Prach, a Catholic priest who's a citizen of Poland, and says, I want you to be the Minister of Education. I couldn't get the time of day from the Minister of Education 15 years ago when we were struggling for accreditation. Our school was not accredited for the first 12 years of its existence. Can you imagine you have kids coming to a school knowing their diploma has no value in their country? We got international accreditation. These were amazing kids. Some of them are here. Ola's filming there. She belongs to the first cohort of women in 1,000 years of Christian history that have got a degree in theology in their homeland. Yula's another one. They were in the same class. And these kids came knowing that their diploma would not have legal value in the country. And they said, we're going to go to night school somewhere else and get a paper, but our education, our formation will be here. So what UKU is doing, and now it's reached the president, is setting standards. Or you could say it, I think, in a more spiritual way, offering hope. Because we don't do something unless we think it's possible. If we think it's really impossible, the likelihood of us trying, drops. But if we see somebody has done it, we say, hey, I'm no worse. I can do it too. And that's what witnessing does. That's what salt and yeast does. It flavors something much bigger, or gives it growth. And that from day one has been, we knew we'd never be, kind of a big school, because it has no funding from the government. There's 2,200 students. In Lviv, there's over 120,000 students. Lviv is like San Francisco or Boston, about 20 institutions of higher learning. And so it's only 2% of the city's student body, much less the country. But by becoming the first university that was, for example, handicapped accessible completely, from day one we set that as a standard. By not having corruption. By, for example, anybody that has worked in the former communist area knows that you had official salaries and then you had unofficial salaries paid in an envelope, non-taxable, etc. There was a moment almost 20 years ago after the Orange Revolution where we said, no, it's very difficult for us. It means we have to raise 30 or 40% more for the same expense, but we're going to pay taxes. Whereas, most businesses did not do that and might not do it locally. You can explain that better than I. And so it rarely happens, I think, in life. I kind of pinch myself when I go back there because I've been away for 11 years. And in those 11 years, the university has grown 3 times the number of programs, students, faculty, and buildings. I probably should have left earlier because, it started really growing when I got out of the way. But, there's no guarantees. You have to be vigilant that some form of corruption doesn't get in or other problems. See, one of the challenges now, UKU is fashionable. I mean, it's the university kids want to go to. It has the best dorms in the country. It has incredible buildings. It has great faculty. It's a joy to be there. And this spreads. This is now known. Just to illustrate what the SAT score is for the computer program, which is run by Yaroslav. Where are you, Yaroslav? Yaroslav, what was the average entrance score for your computer programs this year?
198 out of 200.
Out of 200. The average score for universities in general is maybe 165.
No, 186.
No, not our university.
Yes.
All universities in the country. That's like if you're doing 165, you're going to get into a school. You can get in even with 140. So, it's been a long day, I'm drifting a little bit. But the idea is to model possibilities. And the challenge, what is the challenge now? I said it's fashionable. People now come because they know they're going to get something from it. At first, our faculty came knowing they will give. The top leadership of UKU, if they went into business, they would be multimillionaires. The fellow that's now going to probably be the next rector of the university doesn't even own a car. But he's one of the best university administrators in the country. People have made very conscious sacrifices to be in there. And it could be a danger that you get people coming to be there as faculty students just because they want for themselves. And that's not the service culture of the university. So you have to be vigilant and help people open themselves up to the deep value of service culture. And the other danger, and this is my appeal to you today to think about, maybe you can help. The president is asking, and of course Father Prach could not become the Minister of Education. Bishop can explain, a priest cannot accept a government appointment or be elected to political office. For Catholic priests, it's out. You know, it wasn't the case 30 years ago. You had that Catholic Jesuit priest who was a congressman in, I think, Massachusetts, Father Drennan. But the church takes seriously separation of church and state, and the church is not supposed to be involved in partisan politics. But the president is asking. The mayor wants UKU to help run a major project in rehab. UKU is developing its own rehab project. And everybody wants a piece of this place. It wants that kind of style, that kind of relationship, that kind of quality. And the place is just small. There's not enough people to meet those needs. And the danger is the reputation has gotten so high, it's bigger in some sense than the reality, at least in terms of quantity, not quality maybe. And right now this university needs to be scaled. And I think it needs to begin in Chicago. And I'll tell you why. Because in 1994, as we were about to begin, we began establishing our foundation. First international seat of one of our foundations. And it was in Chicago. And if it wasn't for this foundation that is well represented here, you wouldn't have this university as it is. So what we need is people that might want to volunteer, you know, retirees, the good doctor told me, you know, I'm driving my wife crazy. So come and help UKU develop its rehabilitation program, which hopefully will lead to a medical faculty. Or, you know, if you can't come, if you can fund a professorship that will allow a young person to teach in this university, imbibe this culture, and then share it with the president, with the city, with, you know, social organizations, with the community at large. UKU has that great desire, but right now it's a question of human and other resources.
So it's a scaling up issue of a great story, great talent, great potential, and it's making a difference. Maybe if anybody has, and I apologize for this feeling a little bit formal, just there's a lot of us, so if anybody has a question, please ask. Either scream loudly or Sushma has a microphone for you.
Yes, I do.
If not, I'll just keep asking this. So.
I have a question. I admire your mission. I think it's wonderful, educating the heart as well as the mind, to put it in other words, which historically, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was also the goal, the idea of the American university. Unfortunately, in many institutions here, that has deteriorated into forget the heart, we want to get a job and a piece of paper when we get out of here. Do you feel that pressure? And if so, how do you address it? And do you fear that this may come in the future?
So the danger to this approach, which I think we had a big danger about 2013, 14, 15, when there was this just radical growth of the university. It grew in a few years, it doubled. And then basically the leadership of the university, in conversation with the whole community, said, we got to work on these issues. And I think it's in a pretty good place right now. But the danger comes from two sides. It can be that attraction of the purely pragmatic, maybe. Although there's nothing more pragmatic than having a good heart, whether physically or spiritually. But the other thing is, it's a very delicate situation to be speaking heart to heart. There's great vulnerability involved. And for hundreds of reasons, a lot of us turn away from that. Sometimes it's too painful. Sometimes, a child is beaten up by the home environment and, but exactly that child needs it more than anybody. So it's not easy. It's, God bless them, Arizona State University, which has 150,000 students, is developing the American University in Cave, as it does in many places. All of those projects, in the end, have to bring a profit. So, a profitable bottom line will be an ultimate criteria for that. And that will be another model in Ukraine. And that's why I believe higher education that is heart to heart, it can't be a business. It has to be open to the poor that can't pay a tuition that covers, the expenses. And I think much of American higher education, the best of it for a long time was like that. But you need, very major fundraising. 10 years ago, the budget of the university was 90% fundraising, which is unsustainable. Nobody has a school like that. Now it's about 60%. So it's tuition plus university offers services, rents facilities. Businesses love having their corporate meetings in the university just because of the atmosphere. But this is a constant challenge. And one possibility is to somehow break through the prohibition that the government does not support private universities. Private universities don't get any government funding, no grants, no for scientific projects, nothing. That's not the case in the US. But until now, I think paying the price and really breaking our own backs fundraising is better and easier than selling out to a central authority that doesn't view the educational process in the terms that we think are essential for the future. And slowly, we've gotten to the point where the president wants that. And that, I think that is quite amazing. I didn't think I would live to see it.
Do we have another? Oh, please.
Do you have Fulbright grants? Are there people that can get Fulbright grants to teach?
Yes.
Or to study?
Yes. In fact, for the Fulbright program in Ukraine, UCU is, it probably has, along with the Moderator Academy, more Fulbrighters than any of the other 200 schools. So regularly there are Fulbrighters. And one of a person that, Andri's sister, who worked for our foundation for a while in Chicago, she's Chicago born and bred, she ran the Fulbright program in Crete. Unfortunately, Martha died prematurely 2 years ago, and I was at her grave yesterday in Chicago for the first time. But yes, Fulbright, we have a very good relationship with many of the Western embassies. So when the Yanukovych government was trying to close us down in 2012, because our students and our university was protesting the different changes in the Constitution. He's the president that fled to Russia after 100 people were shot in the main square of the city in 214. So in 212, he was already in power, and they were strangling free press. I mean, he was doing a Putin job, trying to begin. And that's why the Revolution of Dignity ultimately, exploded. They were trying to close us down, and it was the American ambassador and other embassies that the international community, and also Hillary Clinton, she was the Secretary of State. And I gave her a tour in Lviv when she was First Lady, actually through the good offices of Marta, who was then working for some other organization. And we kind of had a little bit of a connection there. And when she found out that we were being pressured, because I also had an altercation with a security guy. He came in and he said, "Listen, your students are protesting. I have a letter that's warning you of the consequences if they break the law. They can protest, but if they do a sit-in in front of the Minister of Education's office," which they were doing, the book's going to be thrown at them. And I said, "Listen," and he said, "Sign the letter, and I have to take it back. I've warned you, you sign it, take it back." I said, "Listen, a letter to me is my letter. I need to have a copy of it." He said, "Well, let me call my superior, call this captain. This is the SBU, the former KGB. And in front of me was a young guy, maybe a little bit naive. And he says, "No, you can't. I can't leave you a letter because you might put it on the internet." Which is exactly what I would have done. And so I didn't even read the letter. I pushed it across the coffee table in my office. And I said, "Young man, take this with you and listen to me. You can't show fear with these people. Listen to me. You work for an organization that has a heavy moral legacy. don't do anything your grandchildren will be ashamed of. He said, oh, Father, I'm sorry. If I'm repressing him. So what happened is we were having the Catholic University rectors of Europe were visiting us 2 days later. I said, and we visit each other to see how we live. So I said, I'm going to write you a document to show you how we live. And I explained what the hook is. See, they warned me, I signed it. They've got a document that says I've been warned. Little Maria, beautiful Maria, 22 years old, straight A student. She's in her last semester. She goes and does a sit-in, but she also has a full scholarship in Belgium for graduate school lined up. She's arrested, and she's in the Kyiv jail, and her parents come there, and the cops tell them, this is really a matter for tears. She's going to have a criminal record. She's not going to graduate school. We know that was the plan because we've been following her. We interrogated her. She was crying. And you know what? It's a matter for tears. Your university rector, her rector was warned. Look at this. This is a piece of paper. And so the parents are, And then they come to me, back to me, and they say, Father, it's happened. Maria and John and Ivan, and they're all arrested. We told you. We tried to help you. What can we do now? They're not going to go to graduate school. This is good. You're going to have a mess with the parents. The parents know that you knew. Can we come to an agreement, dear Father? Maybe just stop the protest. Stop the students when they want to protest. And, we begin a relationship of cooperation. This was just 212. And so I wrote this thing up, and a few of my friends internationally, including Edward Lucas, who was editor of the international section of The Economist, wrote it up. It went viral. The European Union did a resolution about it. This fluffy white little, Catholic university is being persecuted by the former KGB. It got to Hillary Clinton. It came out actually in the WikiLeaks, her correspondence about this case. And Ukraine was waiting for an IMF contribution. And Hillary, 2 weeks later, flew into Kyiv. And she invited me for a public meeting. And during her meeting with Yanukovych, the American ambassador sees that the head of the SBU is present, Holubec. And he's thinking, why the hell is this guy at this meeting? We're talking about economics, politics, not security issues. After a 20-minute monologue, Yanukovych points to him and says, well, yeah, these were all our achievements. We do have, issues come up. Yeah, there's that thing with the Catholic University. But Mr. Holubec, he jumps up, and you should see people around Yanukovych who are, constantly terrified. He's going to go and make amends. The next day, he flew out, came to our university. He didn't apologize, but they put out a press release that he went and apologized, which for us was good enough, because if they said they're apologizing, there was something to apologize for. But anyway, this is the difference the Ukrainian Catholic University makes, because those guys went to every other school in the city. But because they're getting government funding, because they don't have behind them a legacy of a church that was in the catacombs, was illegal. By the way, every student for the first 15 years in our university, did an interview with somebody from the underground church. So there's two M's that are the foundation of the university. There's the marginalized, who for us are represented by the people with disabilities, who we put in the middle of the university, and the other M are the martyrs, those who witness. The word martyr means witness. And they teach us, they overcame the greatest challenges of the 20th century, so maybe they can teach us about the challenges of the 21st. They've sure taught me.
This has been it's been a wonderful discussion. I'm going to ask one last question, and it's going to be maybe not a big curveball, but it should be, hopefully it'll be interesting. But in the meantime, I just wanted to, on behalf of our family, on behalf of the foundation, just to thank everybody again for caring. Number one, just for caring enough to be here. We're very proud of what many others have done for the university. We unfortunately are only supporters, but have not had the chance to actually live through the life of what the university offers. But there are many ways to help, whether it's through a capital fund, whether it's through a donation to the operating fund, whether it's through a donation to support the rehabilitation project that His Grace just mentioned. Please speak with a few of the people. We have Yuda, can speak with Oida, can speak with Joe. If you have a desire to help, or go online. We're not tracking tonight. So we just ask you if you find it in your hearts, and we're going to end with a heart-to-heart question. But I also just wanted to recognize a couple of other people that are in our audience today, and also dealing with education. Is we have the principal of our Ukrainian Catholic grade school, Anna Cirilli, is here. So we just wanted to say thank you. We try to, with the Catholic education, we try to start from the ground up with our pre-kindergarten students, and hopefully with the goal, some of these students now may have an ambition to go to school in Lviv and to finish their education, or to highlight their education in the Ukrainian Catholic University. So, there's Anna. Okay, but again, thank you for all your work, Principal Cirilli. And we also have somebody from our consulate, so our assistant or vice consul, Yevgeny Drobot, if Yevgeny is still here. Yevgeny is here, so thank you for your support. And the consulate is always supporting the foundation and always present, so thank you for that. So this May, I think we were all proud of Your Grace when we saw you give a commencement speech at Notre Dame University. And I know there are a few Notre Dame alums in the audience, and if not Notre Dame alums, there are Notre Dame football alums or football fans. And I just have to tie this, and it's very personal, because there are also a number of people from Cleveland that are here. Who has Cleveland roots? I know that there's quite a few. And I'm going somewhere with this. We've been looking for a quarterback for years, and that spiral that you threw was amazing. It was on the spot. It wasn't intercepted, and you didn't have to take
After my death, that's going to be my, Andy Warhol, 10 minutes to fame. But no, all kidding aside, just wanted to say thank you very much for joining us today, Your Grace. I think each of us supports you, and everybody supports in one way or another. I know we were just excited to be able to share again with a kind of a diverse group of people. People come from different places. There are friends from different parts of our world, of our life, and we thank you very much for helping us share. And we wish the university all of the best. Harry and I and our kids, Oresta and Rusan, we're going to continue helping as much as we can. And thank you very much again. We'll give His Grace the last word. We're going to have a little bit of a program afterward. Our friends from Kyoto will sing a few songs for us, and please, dessert will be served, and continue enjoying yourselves, networking. Please, again, ask questions of the people who might have some good information for you. But
thank you, a big thank you to each and every one of our guests for making the effort today. So, last word to His Grace.
I'm very grateful to you, and I returned from what was my 6th trip since last February to Ukraine just 2 weeks ago. And everywhere I went, people expressed their gratitude to Americans. And they asked me to thank Americans, so I thank you, all of you, for being part of a society, active members of a community which has, our country has many, many problems. But it's a country that received our parents who had nothing after 6 years of war, and most of our parents were refugees for 5 years, 4 or 5 years. So people are very grateful to America in Ukraine. We had a moment of silence for all those who have given their lives. 14 members of the UCU family have been killed. 8 graduates and 6 brothers or fathers of students or staff or husbands of people in our community. And I think we have about 70 staff, students, or graduates somewhere in the uniformed services. So I ask you to pray for them. Prayer moves mountains. Prayer can change the course of bullets or missiles. But most importantly, prayer moves hearts. We need some conversion. We need people to think in a different way to stop this war. Your very presence here is a sign of your moral stance and your commitment. And if you can, tell somebody about what you heard, what you see. I didn't meet one in those 6 trips and visiting refugees in 10 countries. I didn't meet a single Ukrainian soldier, citizen, student, grandmother, widow, orphan, refugee that said, we've got to make a compromise. You know, it's just too much. Well, everybody says, we've got this one has to be taken to the end, because any compromise will lead to a subsequent invasion. And any occupation is genocide. So people are conscious of the price. They know the society needs to pay it. And they know they need the help of the international community so that David can stand to Goliath and that God's truth can win. Last week's polls, for those who haven't heard it, sociological surveys say 95% of Ukrainians are convinced that Ukraine's going to win this war. And you know, motivation is so important in everything that we do. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. And maybe we can end with the Ukrainian salute to the glory. And say, Slava Ukraini!